Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday, January 10th. It is the youth hunt weekend here in Tennessee. Unfortunately, it has rained pretty hard for the last 24 hours, and the youth hunters that we thought were going to be out here hunting this weekend ended up deciding not to come. I don't blame them. It has been filthy nasty. I'm guessing we've had probably 2.5 to 3 inches of rain in the past 24 hours. I need to go check the rain gauge in a minute just to find out, but the wind is starting to pick up now. My cameras have been dead for 48 hours. I haven't had a single deer picture in 48 hours, so I really don't blame them for not coming out. A couple of them couldn't come because of sporting events they had going on, but you know, so I guess technically deer season here on the farm is now over. You know, regular season ended last weekend. My dad did take a doe 3 days before season closed. It is down here aging in my outside refrigerator, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here a little bit later. We are going to butcher that deer here in a couple hours. My dad's going to come up, going to help me. He likes to help when he kills one. He comes help butcher the deer. So I'm, always appreciative of him coming up and helping butcher, whatever he kills. So it makes the job go a little bit faster because I can just give him a hind quarter and say, break this thing down, and he can do it himself. So that's always welcome and appreciated, the help for that. I'll take you to the basement in a little bit, and I'll kind of show you how I age my deer. I had lunch with a buddy last week, and he was asking me about how I age my deer. And when I was talking to him about it, he's like, you need to kind of do a little bit of a video update on that, because my aging progression has changed since I first started trying to age deer 4, 5, 6 years ago, and how I was doing it then versus how I'm doing it now. Now, part of that is because of now I have an extra refrigerator that I can do it in, whereas the first few deer that I did, I was doing it kind of in cheap Igloo coolers, and then I started doing it in more expensive, like Orion or what you buy them at Walmart. I forget the brand name, but it's the gray with the blue handles. I'll find it, and I'll Lifetime brand coolers. So I mean, they're all kind of similar to like the Yetis and the high end coolers, because they have a really good gasket that can be airtight. So they age differently in those kind of coolers than they do in a cheap cooler that doesn't seal up airtight, and it also ages differently than if you're doing it in a refrigerator like I'm doing. So I'll show you that here in a little bit. This has been, I'm going to say, probably my least active deer season in 10 years. I hunted less this year than I have in 10 years. My son hunted less this year than he has since he started hunting 7 years ago. He maybe only hunted 3 days all season. I probably only hunted 12 or 13 days, which is dramatically down from like 3 years ago when I was probably in the woods. Well, when I shot my big buck, I probably hunted 50 days that year. So this is dramatically down. Part of that, if you've seen the videos in the past, I mean, I shot my buck during muzzleloader season, and so I did not really have a need to get back out immediately. And then immediately after that buck, you saw in the previous video where we salvaged a roadkill buck. So we really filled up the freezer with those 2 deer for the most part. So we really didn't have a need to hunt because we didn't have anywhere to put any deer, I will say. That being said, we are changing some of our strategy with our cooler management, our freezer management plan for the next year. We froze a bunch of garden produce in the past year, and it took up 40–50% of the freezer space. So this coming year, we're going to do more canning and preserving, pressure canning, and making more jellies and preserves and things like that with the stuff that's in the freezer now, so we have more space for deer meat next year. That being said, I have about 100 to 110 pounds of deer meat in the freezer right now. That will be most likely enough to get us through till about the time deer season opens next year, and there's always a good chance that we're going to recover another roadkill deer like we do every spring around here. But I'm going to take you down to the basement, and I'm going to show you the patio refrigerator and how I am aging my dad's deer. All right, so this is our patio refrigerator here. Check the temperature just a little bit ago. It is set on 37 degrees. Don't mind all the other stuff. I mean, like I said, we are on a farm. I've got cabbage that I just harvested the other day. We've got some homemade hot sauce that I've got in here. We've got beef tallow that I've rendered down. All kinds of trapping bait in here that I've got saved up that was just scrap from deer and rabbits and squirrels and things like that. But what we got is I've got these game bags. Oh, it's stuck. Oh, I got that sitting on it. So I've got these Black Ovis game bags, and I've used these for probably 9 years now. And what I do is I just put my quarters in these game bags, and then I put them here in the refrigerator. So I normally can put most of a deer down here on this rack, which pulls out, and sometimes I'll put a like a drying rack or whatever underneath it there so that they're not setting any blood. Well, I let these hang out here for a little while, so they drained really well. Plus, the deer itself hung for 24 hours before we actually skinned it out and quartered it up. So I've got all my quarters and my grind meat in a this right here is like my grind meat bag. So that's all the scrap grind meat that we saved in there. But I've got it in here, and this deer has been aging now for 9 or 10 days. I can't remember exactly which one, but it's been aging that whole time. The meat itself, I've dry aged plenty of deer. I call this dry aging because there's basically no moisture in this refrigerator, versus a wet aging, which I've got a buddy that wet ages. He wet ages in a cooler with a bag of ice in the bottom, and he just puts the meat on top of the ice, and so there's always some level of humidity inside that cooler. On the other hand, this is actually more of a dry aging. It's not like a true dry aging cooler that you could buy specifically for meat aging, but this is close enough for what the average person is going to use or experience or be able to tell the difference of anyway. So I'll show you more of this when we take it inside, and I'll get some video clips of the butchering process and just some of that just to plug it in so you can see how this meat looks. But we love having our meat aged at least 7 days. Anything I can do beyond that really is a bonus. I mean, we've had the ability to do this one for 9 or 10 days now because we haven't really needed the refrigerator space. He's coming in, but I'll catch up with you again here in just a second on some other stuff. And that's how I do my aging of deer. If you have dry aged, or some people as they call it wet aged, if you keep it in a cooler with ice, if you have aged your deer, drop a comment below. Let me know what kind of results you've had. That's just an explanation of how I do it and what works best for me. I will say one of the big things with what I do, keeping the meat in those game bags really reduces the amount of waste of the rind or the crust that forms on the outside of the deer, the quarters as it's aging. I have aged deer as much as 28 days in that refrigerator, and in that case I put like a baking sheet, or not, a drying rack, like a cookie drying rack or whatever you call them. I'm not, a cooling rack maybe? Cooling rack, drying rack, I don't know. I've put it on that tray, and I've laid the hind quarter on that directly, not covered, not anything, and just let it age in there for 28 days. And it turns almost black. The meat layer on the outside, probably, I'm going to say 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe, just turns really hard and tough, kind of like jerky. And you really can't do anything with that. At least in my experience, you can't. I guess you could probably grind it if you wanted to, but I just end up feeding it to the dogs, honestly. I just go through and I take a really sharp knife and I just trim all that off. Now, I will say, when you do that, the coloration of the meat beneath that crust layer is just incredible. I've posted some shorts and reels in the past of how that meat looks after I've dry aged it for 21 to 28 days, and it is just beautiful looking meat. I mean, the color is incredible. The grain of the meat just pops. It is fork tender. I mean, it is incredibly tender. The big downside is you do have some waste whenever you age it that way, because all that rind that forms, you end up disposing of it, or I do. I don't use it. I will say I have had a couple people ask too, have I ever aged it long enough to the point to where I have any kind of bacterial growth or mold forming on the outside? I have not. You know, I know if you see a lot of people, like the Italians, for example, are famous for aging a lot of their meats, their salamis, and all the different, you know, meats that they age over there, and they'll hang them until they form that kind of mold on the outside of it. I don't age anything nearly that long, and I don't know that I could really even get that kind of formation in a refrigerator. I think I would probably have to do it in a different climate. I'd have to do it in a warmer temperature, you know, different humidity levels than what I'm getting inside that refrigerator. That's not what I'm going for anyway. It's an interesting thought process to think about how that would be different. But the same thing, you're going to waste all that you're going to have on the outside. Whereas me keeping it in the game bags, I get the real good firmness of the meat. The grains begin to pop. The meat gets tender. It becomes more mild. But I don't have the waste whenever I age it in the game bags the way that I showed you. Thank you so much for coming along. This has been a extremely brief deer season, deer journal for me compared to past years, but thank you so much for watching. I wish you a wonderful 2026. Drop your comments below if you have any. If you haven't yet, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified every time we upload a new video. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.